just locate the package. So it's going to be in here for me. It's going to be called U5 tutorial assets.unity package. Press open and just wait till it decompresses. So once it's decompressed, I'm just going to click import and wait till it's finished importing. Alright guys, so as you can see there, all the assets have been imported. Now the first thing we're going to do is get used to the interface within Unity. I recommend you do this before anything else. So the first thing we're going to do is get used to the 3D interface. So we're going to go to game object, 3D object cube. So as you can see here, we have created a cube in our scene. Now if you want to see other angles of the cube and whatnot, we can just pan around the object using this using this hand tool, which basically allows you to pan around objects and through a scene in Unity 3D. So go to the top left of your interface and you can click on that the very top left. It's basically like a hand icon, which is used to pan around. You just hold down the left mouse button and you can pan around like that. You can also combine this with the right mouse button key. If you hold down the right mouse button key, you can move the inspector view, or rather the scene view. It's not the game camera. It's not exactly this is not exactly the game camera. As you can see, we don't have a game camera. If we were to press play right now, we don't really have any camera to show anything within the scene. This is basically the editor camera. That's I think the best terminology for that. So as you can see, we can combine the right mouse button tool and the pan around tool to move around objects within a scene efficiently. So once you've gotten used to that, we're gonna see how to actually move around objects within the 3D editor. Now this is actually to move the values of the objects and the positions. So the second button to the right of the pan around tool is the move tool, which is basically you can move the objects in all axes. You can also do this within the inspector tool, the inspector window. As you can see there, we can adjust the values numerically, but if you want to do it visually, you can use these arrows, which as you can see here, we can change the values of the y-axis, and as you can see here, the z, the z and y. This is the z-axis, which is back and forward, and we can also change the x-axis, which is left and right. So as you can see there, that is the 3D editor. I want you guys to get a good feel for it and get used to it before we jump into actually creating the scene and 3D objects and whatnot. So yeah, there's that. Now there's also the rotation tool, which is quite straightforward. We're just going to use the pan around tool to get to a better angle, and the rotate tool is you can do this numerically as well here, or you can do it visually. You can just rotate objects like this. Now this is the scale tool, which is actually very interesting. If you use the middle, if you're going to do it visually, you can use the middle and just drag it out to scale objects in all three axes. Now if you want to do it in a specific axis, you can do it visually like this, or you can do it numerically, just like the position rotation. So everything you can do here in this inspector, but the tool actually makes it very easy to do visually. So as you can see there, that's that. This is also kind of a general transform tool. I don't personally use it that much. You can also, as you can see here, move the position like that. It's kind of a general, it combines all three, but I like to personally use the tools separately. So as you can see there, that is the 3D editor. So I'm gonna get rid of this cube for now because we're not gonna really be using it. Alright, so now I'm just gonna share my opinions about what the most important windows you guys have within your workspace. Now this is my favorite configuration, but you can always move around. Let's say you want the hierarchy to be on the right with all these other windows. You can move that there for a bigger scene. So this is my personal favorite. I like to have the hierarchy separate here, and you can also move the workspace. You can move the size of the separate windows with these. If you just go to the edge of a window, you can use the arrow tool to just move around. So just find the best possible configuration for you and work with that. So if you're missing a window, you're seeing up here, as you can see here, I've got the hierarchy on the left here, the scene view, the game tab, the animator, the project tab on the bottom, the inspector, and the lighting tab. And I guess this is just the console, but this does not really matter for now. If you're missing one of these tabs, you can just go to window and click on one of the tabs. Let's say I want to add the profiler. So we've got the profiler here. So it kind of just stacks the window on top of. It's not really part of the whole workspace. So you just want to click on the profiler tab here, as you can see. Click and drag and hold it down to wherever you want. So let's say I want the profiler here. So yeah, as you can see there, customizing the workspace is quite easy. So just find the best configuration for you. So once you've done that, that's pretty much it for the basics of the interface. So now we're going to actually learn how to create a terrain with the Unity terrain editor and create a scene for the player or for the scene itself. Because we're not going to actually create a player, we're just going to create a camera that can orbit around and move around the scene itself to see our work. Alright, so let's get started with that. Alright, so now we're going to actually create a terrain in the scene itself. So we're going to go to Game Object, 3D Object, and then down to Terrain. So as you can see here, we've got a very basic plain looking terrain. There's really no textures, no height map, nothing to show for right now. But before we do any edits in the terrain itself and in the textures or anything else, we're gonna actually add lighting in the scene so we can see the details on the terrain. We're gonna go to Game Object, Light, and then to Directional Light. And then once you've added a directional light, as you can see here, the scene is a lot brighter, including the skybox, which we can edit later on in the lighting tutorial, which is later on in this tutorial. Anyways, as you can see here, this is very basic lighting. If we were to disable the directional light, as you can see here, the scene is a lot darker. So you definitely need to have some sort of lighting in your scene. So for now, our lighting is going to be through this directional light. So what we're going to do first is add a texture to the terrain itself before we actually edit the height map of the terrain. So we're going to go to after you've clicked the terrain in the scene view, you can go to the inspector tab and go straight to this brush looking icon, and once you've clicked that, go to edit textures, add texture. So we're gonna assign the two textures, and I provide you guys with two terrain textures. It's called stone terrain. You can find it in your images, or you can just search stone terrain and it'll pop up there. So we can press add, and as you can see here, the terrain is textured now. So we can see a lot more detail in the terrain, and this will help us when we are editing the terrain in 3D. So now let's say we wanted to add mountains, or kind of like a height map in the terrain, because it's very plain right now. It's just flat. So we just want to add, let's say, mountains and whatnot. So we go to this raise/lower terrain tool, which is the first button in the terrain editor. And this is all in this inspector, by the way. So we can, as you can see here, you can select a brush. Let's just select this one to start off for now. So it shows this little blue spot, and once you click on the terrain, you can just experiment around. And as you can see here, it just adds a height map in the terrain. Once you keep on clicking and select different brushes, it adds a different kind of texture to the terrain. It's very cool. So you can just play around with this. It's very easy to create terrains in Unity 5. Alright, one thing I forgot to mention is about the textures. If you're not sure what this, once you edit the texture, if you're not sure what this blue texture is, it's actually the normal map, which kind of gives the texture depth and more detail. So that is very important to apply that, not only the diffuse. So I'm just as you can see here, I'm just playing around with the terrain. I'm just gonna create a very basic looking terrain. It's not very important for now. Alright, so the next thing we're gonna do is actually add a 3D model which has been made in 3ds Max, and this model has been downloaded from a website called TF3DM. All credit goes to them. It's a free model, you can use it in your game. So once you open the tutorial assets package, if you go down to the abandoned house folder, just open that up and go to the not the 3ds file, but rather the prefab, the abandoned house prefab, and drag that right into the scene. You can drag it in wherever you want in this scene, and I'm just going to use the tools that I've just taught you guys to scale it and move it to wherever I like in the scene. So I'm just going to rotate it here, as you can see, and I'm going to bring it down a little so it actually it touches the terrain. I don't want a floating house, and there we go. Alright, so now we're going to play around with shaders in Unity. So let's just collapse this, and as you can see here, we've got the abandoned house. So if we select it once and then select it twice, we're gonna actually select the object itself. So from here we can, in the inspector tab, we can actually assign the shaders and whatnot. So the shaders used for this abandoned house that I used is the standard shader, which is actually very good. Now, from the standard shader, I'm going to show you guys some things you can tweak and adjust and use and whatnot. Now, all these materials are only a diffuse map and a normal map, so it's very simple. What the things you can edit in here, as you can see here, if you click on the color tool beside the diffuse map, you can actually drag and actually pick a color or kind of a ambient color for, or how bright you want a texture to be. So if we drag it all the way up to the white, as you can see here, the texture isn't really bright and reflective kind of to the lighting. Now if we drag it all the way down, as you can see, that's the darkest it can get. Now we're gonna put it kind of in the kind of around here, so it's not too bright and not too dark either. So once we've done that, we can also adjust. Now this is the standard shader, this is not the specular. I'll go through the differences between the both. Now this is a metallic based, so we can, if we don't have a metallic map, I guess, we can drag and, as you can see here, once we've used the slider, the metallic slider, you can see the material properties kind of change a bit. And this is more suitable for metal type textures. And you can also go for the standard specular setup. Now if you don't have a specular map, you can adjust the amount of the specularity on the certain material. But this is not very suitable for this type of material, which is more of a rock type of material. So we're just gonna put it all the way down. Now it doesn't really matter which shader you select, standard or standard specular, but we're just gonna go with standard anyways. So that's pretty much a brief summary of how to use shaders within Unity 3D. It's very simple, and you can also buy shaders on the Unity asset store. It's very extensive. This is basically just the basic Unity shaders that come with the Unity 5. So now we're gonna go a little deeper with graphics, and actually I'm actually gonna show you guys how to adjust the lighting and make the lighting look nicer within the scene. Alright, so the first step in lighting in general in Unity to get good lighting in your scene is just the position of the direction of the light. So you want to get a good direction for the light to hit in certain spots and whatnot. It really matters on the map itself, and what objects you have in the scene, and what you want or where you want the dynamic lighting to hit. And then you also have to consider some other things, like where the shadows are going to be casted and whatnot. So anyways, we're just going to play around with the directional light for now. So as you can see here, we've got the default or the standard directional light that we haven't really edited that much for now. And we're gonna go to once you've selected it in the hierarchy, we're gonna go into the transform in the inspector tab, and we're actually gonna play around with the values in the rotation. So if you just go over the X, as you can see, we're not going to type in the values because we're going to do kind of visually, but not at the same time, if that makes sense. So we're just going to go over the X, and as you can see here, there's arrows that point both directions, left and right. Now, once you've got that, you can either drag left or drag right. I'm just going to drag right to see what happens. As you can see here, the lighting, you can dramatically change the lighting in this whole scene by just dragging the value or just moving the value. Now if you move it up, it's more of a darker scene. Now if you move it down, it's gonna, the light is gonna hit different certain areas. So let's find a good spot. I think that is good for now, and we're gonna change the Y values for the light, and I think something like, yep, that looks good. So that's good for now. I mean, I'm not going to get too detailed with this as just a tutorial, but yeah, there's that for the dynamic light. So once you've found a good position for your dynamic light, we're actually just gonna mess around in the lighting itself. So if you don't have this lighting tab, you can go to window and then lighting. So once you click on lighting, you can just drag the tab and put it to wherever you want. I personally like it on the right here. So the environment, so first of all, we've got this first tab is the environment lighting. So you can actually select a different skybox if you have one. The only skybox that we have right now is the default skybox that comes with Unity 5. So we're going to select that for now, but the skybox is basically what the image in the sky is, the 3D image in the sky. It dramatically changes the whole scene. If you have like a if you want a night-based map, then of course you're going to have to select a dark skybox. If you want a nice lit map, then you have to select a nice lit skybox, just like this one. So I like the skybox for now. We're going to use it. So the sun, you're going to have to go to this little blue dot here, select that, and then select the directional light. Whatever the main light is in the scene, I recommend you select that as the sun. So this ambient source is basically what the lighting on the object itself is. So as you can see here, there is 3 options: the skybox, gradient, and the color. So let's say we select color, and as you can see here with color, we actually can select what color of ambient lighting we want. So let's say we want the scene to kind of be bluish. We can select a bluish sort of ambient lighting. If you want it brighter, if you want it darker, you can do all that. And you can also, the gradient is also kind of like the color, except you can use 3 different types of colors, which is like the ground color. As you can see here, we can select what kind of ground color you want, and the equator color, which is basically the bounces, the reflection bounces. These are all custom, but I personally would use the skybox. Now the skybox is the skybox lighting as the ambient source is the best in my opinion, because it's kind of relative to the colors of the skybox and even the reflection bounces and all that. I just personally would use a skybox as the ambient source. Now the ambient intensity is really up to you. It's up to what type of map you're going for a brighter or a darker, but I'd personally go all the way up because as you can see here, you got some texture problems when you go down in the ambient intensity. So we're gonna go all the way up to 1, and then the ambient global illumination is gonna be real time. You can do baked if you want to. We're just gonna keep it at real time for now. The reflection source. Now this is this you can do custom as in a cube map, but we don't have a cube map for now. If this was an indoor based map or something, an environment that's based in the indoors, there's no skybox that really can reflect, then in that case, then I personally use a cube map for that. But since we are in the outdoors, there's nothing better to use than the skybox as the reflection source. So we're going to keep the resolution as that. And the pre-computed real-time GI, we're going to keep it at 2 on CPU usage of medium. And it's going to just recalculate a couple things. And of course you can mess around with this to get the best possible quality, but since it's a tutorial, I'm just going to keep it at 2 and medium for now. So bake GI, I always keep it at 40, and then bake padding 2. Never checked final gathering. It's going to take a couple days to bake one scene. It's insane, so I definitely recommend to not select the final gather setting. Now keep it at compressed again to bake the scene a little quicker. So this is the general GI. You can adjust the indirect intensity, which kind of, as you can see here, has an effect on the terrain. Oh no, sorry. The bounce boost is what affects the boost, which kind of boosts the bounce, the amount of intensity in the bounce. As you can see here, if we go closer to the terrain, we can see the bounce from the terrain here is bouncing onto the shadows that are being casted here. So you can play around with that. And we're also going to add fog into the scene too. So if we select fog, as you can see there, oops, let's just go back to the scene. If we go to exponential squared, this is my personal favorite setting. This is a little too much, so we're just going to go 0.005. That looks a little better. And that's pretty much it. So it's going to just continuously build in the background, but if you deselect that, then you can deselect that and then press build once you're done all your settings. But I just like to keep it a continuous building, or continuous baking rather. Alright, so one more thing we're gonna do to make the scene look a little better is we're gonna add a tree model that is actually provided by Unity themselves. They made this asset. It's provided on the asset store for free, so if you can go on the asset store and actually download this asset for free. But I also included this tree model inside the package that that you guys download for this tutorial. So as you can see there, just like any other prefab, you can just click and drag it into the scene view, and we're just gonna make it a little bigger with the tools that I taught you guys, the scale tool, the visual scale tool, as you can see there, and we're just gonna rotate it a bit just to get a better angle for the tree that corresponds with the building behind it. And I think that looks pretty good for now, so we're not gonna be too detailed with it and the positioning and whatnot, but yeah, I think that's pretty good for now. Alright, so here's where things get a little more exciting. So now we're actually going to add a camera into the scene itself to make this a playable demo. And we're going to actually make the camera to be able to orbit around according to your mouse movements and your key inputs. So I actually made a script which is provided here in inside the scripts folder, which is called Free Flight Camera. Now I'm going to show you guys how to add a camera to the scene right now. So we're going to go to Game Object and then Camera. So as you can see here, we've got a camera inside the scene. So now if we go toggle the game window, we can see game camera. So if we go to the scene, this is the scene view. We are just going to position the camera right about in front of the house. So let's just rotate it a bit, and there we go. We've got it in front of the house. I'm just going to move it a little bit, and we can do this all in the inspector or visually, and I'm just going to do it visually for now. And there we go. So I think we've got it in a quite decent position. Alright, so once you got the camera in a decent position in your scene, and we can start actually implementing the script which I actually made. I'm not gonna go through how I made this script. It's quite straightforward if you know basic C#, but we are actually just gonna implement this in the main camera. So what is this main camera doing here? I don't think we're gonna use this, so let's just delete this. I'm not sure why it was there, but I think I might have added it there before while I was planning out this tutorial part. But make sure you always have one camera inside the scene. unless if you have multiple cameras for any reason. But if you have one main camera, make sure you have one, or else it's gonna be a little confusing and you might run into some errors. So now we're just gonna drag the C# script, the free flight camera, into the camera itself in the hierarchy. And as you can see there, we've implemented it in this camera. So now if we go into play mode, as you can see there, if we hold down the right mouse button, we can actually pan around like this. And if you use the WSAD keys, we can actually get around with this camera. So I made this script very versatile, so you can move around your scene and see all your work. So this is kind of we have a playable demo, as you can see here. So if you hold down shift, I also made it so that you can move the camera quicker if you hold down the shift button. And yeah, there's that. So now that we've implemented this camera movement and actually made this scene playable, we are actually going to make this scene and the graphics look better with image effects, and make the camera render this scene with image effects. So let's get started with that. Alright, so let's start actually implementing image effects to the main camera. So I actually provided you guys with some simple image effects inside this tutorial assets package. So we're going to go to camera in the hierarchy, select it, and then go to the add component button under the inspector tab. So press add component and then go all the way down to image effects. Now the first effect we're going to add is going to be called bloom. So go to the bloom and glow folder, and then just the first effect, which is going to be called bloom. So just click on bloom, and as you can see here, if you are in the game tab, you can already see the difference in the lighting. So if we deselect bloom, we can see the without the effect, and then once we select bloom inside the inspector tab, you can see how the blending of the lighting looks a lot better. So the bloom effect is definitely one of my favorite effects, one of my favorite image effects for the camera. So the second effect is going to be called vignetting. So we're going to go to camera and then vignette and chromatic aberration, which is under the same folder in image effects, of course. So now we're gonna implement this. So make sure it's selected, and then go down to intensity, and then just crank this up. So as you can see here, it makes the edges a lot darker of the camera. This is a very commonly used effect across many games. And if you crank it all the way up, as you can see here, you can make quite a cool effect. So you can mess around with that. But we're just gonna go a little lighter. Like, I think that looks pretty good for now. So the chromatic aberration, if you increase that, you can see what the kind of effect it is. It kind of blurs the background in a prism kind of distortion. I like it, but it's not. It's kind of it's a little too distorting. It matters what type of game you're making, but for now we're just gonna keep it at quite low, like there. That looks pretty good for now. So yeah, as you can see there, the scene is already looking a lot better with these two effects. But we're gonna apply some more effects. So we're gonna go to add component again, and then to image effects, and then to what are we gonna add? We are going to add sun shafts. Now sun shafts again makes the blending of the lighting in the skybox a lot nicer. So we're gonna go down to sun threshold, and we're gonna make it a little bluish. And as you can see there, you can already see the sun shafts a little more. It's a little more obvious, and you can see what I'm talking about when you look up on the sky, and then there's an object that is obstructing. So anyways, the sun shaft is a very nice effect as well. So we're gonna add a little one more effect, which is gonna be what is it gonna be? It's gonna be color correction, which is under. No, actually, we're gonna add two more. The second last one is gonna be called screen space ambient occlusion, or SSAO. So we're gonna add that. And this is again another kind of standard effect over in many games. So for whatever reason, this model is not optimized very well. The shadowing is kind of artifacting, but it is a very nice effect. We're just gonna put down the intensity a little, because it's kind of messing with the terrain in the background, and we're gonna crank up the blur a little. And as you can see there, it adds a nice shadowing effect to all the models. So the last effect is going to be it's going to be a color correction curve. So we're going to go to, where is it under? Let me just find it, color adjustments, and then the first one, which is going to be called color correction, curves, and saturation. So as you can see there, we're going to leave the saturation alone for now, but one thing I really like to do with the curves is go to the first blue channel and then just click on this curve anywhere on it and click on that, and then go to the first preset, which is, or sorry, the second preset, which is just kind of a sloped line going upward. It's so just click on that and then just close that, and that's good for now. You can't really see the effect in place now. This is just the standard, but if we go in play mode, as you can see there, we've got the nice bluish effect, which I personally really like. It makes the scene look a lot better. So if you wanted to see the scene before image effects, just click pause and then deselect everything, all the image effects, and as you can see, that is the scene with without any image effects. And then if we apply everything that we just added, as you can see there, that looks a lot nicer. So you can mess around with the image effects furthermore, but that is what we're gonna do for this tutorial, and that's pretty much it for image effects. Alright, so now this is the final part of this tutorial, which is probably the easiest part in learning this engine. So this is the compiling standalone. So once you've actually got a demo, and let's say you wanted to share it with someone, or you wanted to actually play a build of it outside of the Unity editor, you'd go to File and then Build Settings, and then once you've got a demo or a scene, or let's say you've got a couple scenes. Right now we only got one scene, so if you got, let's say, a scene, let's just deselect this just for your demonstration purposes. So we want to add this scene into the build. You press add current, and as you can see there, we've got this scene. So once you've finished the settings, here is pretty much just the target platform. For now, we're just going to keep it at PC and Mac and Linux standalone. These are the three options. We're going to keep it at Windows because I'm running Windows right now. If you wanted to do a Mac build, of course you can do that, or Linux, and we're going to keep the architecture at ×86 and keep that this deselected. The web player, I might do a tutorial on how to upload your game to file uploader, or file hoster rather, like Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. But for now, we're just gonna do a Windows build. So once you've got the scene that you want, or the couple scenes that you want, or whatever you got for your project, you make sure everything's inside the scenes in build, and then you just press build or save it as whatever you want, and then as an exe file. Once you've saved it, and then I'm not gonna actually make this build right now, but once it's finished loading all the build and everything, you can run the app and you can run your game that way. So it's very simple to make a build with Unity 5's default launcher. So there's that, and that is how to make a standalone player for your game in Unity. So that is pretty much it in this whole tutorial for Unity 5. This is a very basic tutorial, mainly for beginners. So if you guys want to see any specific tutorial in Unity, I might start a new series. So just let me know what you guys want to see. And yeah, that's pretty much it, and I will see you guys in the next video.